one of the things as a new landlord or mom and pop landlord, you must follow is fair housing. We're going to talk with the CEO of Hemlane, Dana Dumford, about fair housing and highlight that Hemlane is a place you can go just to get information. They have a resources tab, which as a landlord, you must go visit because you don't want to get got by not following fair housing. Dana, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I know it's one of those topics that people don't want to talk about, and then it happens, and you suddenly get very
Yeah.
interested in talking about
Yeah.
it.
It's one of those things you don't want to do until you get got. You're like, oh my God, it's the most important thing ever. We better figure this out.
Exactly.
Uh,
Um, so just to start with, fair housing violations come in two forms. One, it is folks out there kind of probing to say, is this landlord going to say the wrong thing? There are people who are not even looking for rentals, but they are looking for you to have some sort of fair housing violation from your listing description all the way to a phone call that you may have or an email. And let me give an example of that one, and then I'll tell you about the other fair housing violations we see. The one where it's, someone who's not even looking, but they're just testing you as a landlord. A lot of those have to do with certain cases such as Section 8. Do you accept Section 8? There are certain states like California, where we are, where you are required by law to accept Section 8. It's even also at the county level. So there's states like Florida where you can say no to Section 8, but certain counties like Miami where you must say yes to Section 8.
I didn't know
And
that. Okay.
and so it gets even more complicated from that perspective. But as you can imagine, lawyers go out there and they respond to all of these ads to say, do you accept Section 8? They are able to document all of this, and there can be a lawsuit against you for not following fair housing. So it is really, really important to make sure from that perspective that your processes are set up and that you're really clear with it. We even go so far with our leasing coordination where like you have to accept Section 8 if by law you're required to. And the reason for that is just so you don't even have to think about it. It's just the default that you have to say yes if you're in one of the states with these regulations. Okay, then there's the second type of fair housing violation, and I'll go through some of those details later. But the second one is where a tenant feels like they were treated unfairly.
Mm.
And they feel like you accepted another tenant over them. And it has to do all with communication and how you communicate with them. One of the interesting things that I've seen is that, and this is from talking to other landlords outside of Hemlane as they're coming on to Hemlane or, talking in, forums, etc. One of the interesting things is that trend of tenants who feel like they were mistreated. I have never seen a single case where it happened before the tenant made some sort of payment to you. And it's usually the background and credit check revenue or like a payment that they pay. And so let's just say this, Michael is a tenant and he comes and views the property first.
A prospective
tenant. A prospective tenant. So inquired about the property and comes and looks at it. And while Michael is looking at it, he says, I'm going to move in. I want to move in on March 1st.
Okay.
Okay, let's just say another tenant comes 2 days later and says, well, I'm willing to move in on February 15th. Objectively, if they're both qualified, you take the earlier one, for the move in. And we'll talk about state laws in a moment here. Most likely, and I've never heard of this case, if we tell Michael, great, you filled out an application, it was free, but you paid $40 for a background check, credit report, and income verification. Michael's going to be very pissed if I suddenly tell him there's another tenant who can do February 15th, so you don't get the place.
Yeah.
And so that's where sequencing and how you communicate and over communicate with tenants is incredibly important. And the moment that you click a button I don't care what property management solution you're using, the moment you click that button to request a background and credit check, which oftentimes comes with income verification as well, the tenant is being charged money. They are paying for that nationwide. It's not free. They have to pay and reimburse TransUnion or Equifax or whoever is pulling this data. The moment that they do that, before that moment, you need to sit down with that tenant and just let them know about what your process is. So a better way to do it with Michael would be, hey, Michael, you were the first to see this place. I objectively take applicants on a first come, first served basis. However, there's from a move-in perspective, if someone moves in earlier, that's what I define as first qualified. So I see your move-in date is not until March 1st. Could you start paying for February 15th, February 10th, whatever it is? That over communication is really important. And with Michael, I don't want to lose Michael. I don't want Michael to go to another property. So it's very sequencing is really important. But the moment that that other person who can move in earlier, the moment you have their application, you definitely want to get in touch with them to understand how likely are they going to be moving forward if I give them a background and credit check.
Mhm.
Is it going to be 24 hours that they fill it out? Do they have to wait another week? Because you don't want to lose both of the applicants and suddenly have no one.
Mhm.
And so you really need to understand that and then also communicate with the other applicant who has the application in to say, here is where everything is. I found that if you do that, you never, ever have any fair housing violations because for Michael, yes, it was a pain to fill out an application, but there was no money or transaction involved. But the
Right.
moment he fills out a background and credit check and then you decline him anyways, that's where he'll be like, oh, you were
So,
discriminating against me as a white
something's
male.
funky. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's just really, really important to be able to communicate that process of here's the objective criteria I use. And one of them is based on that move-in date, based on credit, whatever it may be. But here is my objective criteria. Here's my minimum for credit, income to rent ratio, all of that. So I think with technology, that's where there's this balance. You definitely need to use technology and use the right technology. There's some, excuse me, there's some platforms out there where they run the application and the background and credit check all together.
Mhm.
I think that's a huge mistake because what ends up happening is more tenants are going through that process at the same time. And
Yes.
and then you have more of those fair housing threats, violations, et cetera, that come on your desk. But once you have someone who says, yeah, I'm interested, I spent the time to fill out the application, I've done the showings, that is when you want to take this to the next step and say, okay, great. How do I make sure that I communicate what the next steps are for them and assuming they can meet these next steps that we would move forward with them. And so you don't want to lose people. You don't want to scare them because again, if the person moving in February 15th decides not to move in, maybe that March 1st date with Michael may be better, but really just making sure to over communicate and watch your sequencing of when things happen.
Yeah, that's amazing. The other thing we got to talk about with fair housing is actually ads, right? There are things that people can put in ads that are red flags. Isn't that true?
Yes, and it depends on your state as well. So, for example, here in California, if you put great family neighborhood, that is a violation because you're discriminating
Wait,
against
wait, wait, wait. I say great family neighborhood and that's a violation? That's
that
crazy. That's
violation.
crazy.
That has gone to court because suddenly you're
Wow.
discriminating against folks who do not have children. Yeah, no, I'm not joking. I'm not.
Where does great family thing say that you can be single and not live there? But okay. All right. This has gone to court. I'm just gonna laugh.
Yes.
That's kind of
So
funny.
what you would do objectively is say, here's the school district. Here is the schools and the ratings, top rated school district.
Yeah,
That is
you so
very objective.
you could say okay, got it. Got it.
Yes. So
Okay.
you can talk about the schools, you can talk about anything that is objective. But the second you start saying great family neighborhood, great neighborhood for single people, you are discriminating. And so you want to be very, very mindful that on your ad, you don't get too creative from that perspective.
I guess. I guess there's lots of do's and don'ts with communication with tenants, with ads. One of the things I love about working with Hemlane and yourself, Dana, is you, meaning your team, does a great job of collecting all of this, putting it out there at a state level. Why don't you highlight the resources that Hemlane has that people can come to and just take a look at?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and one other thing about that, we use AI in the platform for the listing descriptions, and we actually account for fair housing. So unlike,
Ah,
I mean, if you go to ChatGPT or something like that, it may put great family neighborhood in there. But from our perspective, we have those restrictions in place where we say, hey, we do not want things that are not objective in here
okay.
because that would, hurt the landlord.
That's a bad idea. You don't want to get
Yeah.
sued. Yeah.
So if you go to Hemlane here, there's a section ups. I don't have no idea what I just did. Okay, so if you go to resources here and go to blog,
Mhm.
you can go ahead and type in fair housing. What you'll see with fair housing is that there's state laws, and then there's also just what every landlord must know about fair housing. So go ahead and click on that article. You can read everything in here about fair housing, what are top mistakes that landlords have made, and then you have all of your state laws here.
Ooh,
So you
look at that.
click on any state. So I'll do California just because we're here. And you'll see the very first thing that you'll see under here is fair housing.
Got it.
And then you can learn about it at the federal level and then go through all the different types of cases here. Source of income is a very interesting one because that is why you legally are required to accept Section 8 because it was
Mm.
considered in California then as a source of income. And
Oh,
so
I
all
didn't
of
know that. Okay.
yeah, so that was why there was the change was it's considered a source of income. So you'll definitely want to make sure to review this. There is also with roommates completely different restrictions.
Oh, absolutely, completely different. Yes.
And so that is also in there in the articles as well as in the state articles, we'll put things in there as well with it. But you can read all of this about fair housing and how it works. So just go to resources at the top, click blog, and you can go ahead and put it into questions in mind and go ahead and type anything in there.
Yeah. Dana, I love what Henley's doing. You also have this trial, which I strongly recommend people take a part of, even if they don't have a rental unit, because they really get to feel like they are being a landlord, working with tenants, prospective tenants, maintenance requests. Where can they find the trial on the website since we got it up? Look at that. There it is.
Yeah, you can go to hemlane.com, click try 14 days free here. Just mention one rental at a time because you do get 20% off your first year.
Dana, you and the team are amazing. I love how you are investing. It's been fun. We've been doing this a couple of years now, and to see where Hemlane's come from has been amazing. The team's doing great now adopting AI where appropriate. It's been fun to watch, and we will see you in Vegas, right?
I will see you in Vegas in less than a month. Yes.
It's less than a month, folks. I can't believe it. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Michael.